Today, I'm super excited to be chatting with my good friend, Ned Gow. I was introduced to Ned through my husband Mike, and over the years, we've had a lot of fun times together. Amidst those fun times, I've had the privilege of watching Ned grow his side passion into something that quite literally brings music to our ears. Ned is one of those people who has an infectious, go-getter attitude, and I'm sure we're all going to have a lot of learnings from his outlook on life. Professionally, Ned has built an incredible career in commercial real estate at Colliers, while also being the drummer in one of New Zealand's favourite bands, No Cigar, a band that has skyrocketed with sold-out tours and a global fan base. Ned has a bit of a different career story to what is typical on Good Shift, as while he started up No Cigar with his friends on the side of his property career, it's not because he was looking to find a way out of his day job. His career hasn't followed a straight path. He started working 30-hour weeks in property while still at university, but after graduating, he took a lucrative role in a media sales startup, a move driven by financial opportunity. At 22, he was making good money, learning directly from a CEO, and working in a high-growth environment. But then, he walked away. He spent 6 months travelling, and when he came back, he made a deliberate choice to return to what he studied and got a job in property, a field that aligned with his long-term vision. This meant trading a stable, high-paying media sales job for the uncertainty of an almost entirely commission-based role in property. Not long after starting up his career at Colliers, Ned reignited his passion for music, and No Cigar released their first single in 2019. Ned is proving that you don't have to choose between a stable career and creative success. You can have both. In this conversation, we're going to break down the mindset shifts behind Ned's career moves, how to take smart career risks without regret, the balance between financial security and creative freedom, and how to balance two roles without burning out. But most importantly, the life and soul of Good Shift, how to build a working life that truly fulfills you. Ned, I'm so excited for this conversation today. Welcome to Good Shift.
Kia ora, Freya. Yo, good to be here. So good to be here.
So great to have you here. We've had some informal chats about what you've done and haven't dug into the really meaty stuff, so I'm really excited to do that for our listeners today. So we'll start off with talking a little bit more into those shifts so people can get an understanding of where your head's at. You've made some big shifts.
Yeah.
Property, media, travelling, back to property and starting up a band. So to give the listeners a bit more context on this, we'll just spend a short amount of time on a few questions. At 22, you were making around 6 figures, but you quit that job to go travelling after about 18 months. So what motivated that decision?
There's a few things. I was in a career which was financially very satisfying. Emotionally, it wasn't probably ticking all the boxes that it needed. And we live in New Zealand, which is a tiny little island in the bottom of the Pacific. We don't get to see that much. So in the back of my mind and in the back of a lot of New Zealanders, young New Zealanders' minds, you want to go and see the world at some point. And so going from, and there's a bit of background to this, I worked in property before I worked in media and had always loved property, but the money signs were glowing and I was offered a job by a legend, Paul Kenny, at Shout Media. And I couldn't look past the money. I couldn't look past at 22 getting paid a very consistent salary, and I had two options. One was to continue in property and to go into something full commission based at the age of 22. It was going to be a bit of a risk. Who knows how long it would have taken to earn anywhere near as much as I was going to in media. So I delved into media, and during that it was such a really, really good experience. Learned a huge amount. It was a small business. You could tangibly see it growing on a day-to-day basis. You have the CEO right next to you. You have the general manager on another seat. You're doing almost all of the sales as well. You're not just a small part in a big moving beast. But I suppose it got to about a year into it, and I started to think about the future and whether or not I wanted to be in media for a long time. And that's when I had a conversation with a couple of my best friends about traveling overseas. And once that seed got planted, there was no escaping. We just made a plan and wanted to go for it. And I think it's probably one of the best things I've ever done, being able to travel for 6 months.
And what was it that you gained on that travel that makes you say it's one of the best things that you've ever done?
So much. You learn so much from travel, especially at extended periods. Look, I hadn't left the nest much in terms of Auckland. I'd been flatting with your husband, Mike, and but you live in a relatively confined space when you're in New Zealand, and I hadn't left the nest. So when you go for extended periods to areas like India or Morocco, and you get these culture shocks, you just learn so much. I think you learn a huge amount about yourself. You learn independence. You learn budgeting. You learn who to deal with, or who to spend time with, who to trust. We got scammed in Morocco. We also got scammed in the Himalayas by some guru that wanted to take us. A scamming guru. They're pretty common, actually. Like in the Himalayas, these so-called gurus will ask you if you want to go onto these big trips into the Himalayas, and they have nothing planned, but they tell you that they've got these great bits of accommodation, these great courses. You end up doing the same yoga every day. We were staying in mud huts, and we had to pay a huge portion of what we'd saved up towards this. So we got scammed there. We got scammed in Morocco. But all of that stuff, as minute examples, are just such good learning blocks for your life. I think after going to those sort of countries, you feel so comfortable anywhere you're sleeping. So, especially when you've been on the scammers journey. We were in the back of a car for like 8 hours at a time, having to navigate through the Himalayas. She had no idea where she was taking us, and we were like falling asleep while we were going over these really dodgy roads. And so I think traveling in general opens your eyes to so much. You end up meeting all walks of life. I'll keep on going back to it, but New Zealand is a very, very small island. You're surrounded by New Zealanders most of the time, but when you travel, there are no New Zealanders. And so you learn how different cultures interact, how they've been brought up, their education, and generally it's so much different, just the way that they think. And I think it just opens your horizons to so much more. So it's something that most New Zealanders do and do their OE, but I think at that age, at 22, it was really vital in terms of getting a worldly perspective.
And I think what you're saying is so important. These are things that we don't get taught at school, at uni, all these life skills, and especially connecting with different people, being on the lookout for different things, opening your eyes to a bigger worldview. So I'm definitely a big proponent of travel as well for people who have the option to do that. And what did travel allow you to do in terms of reflection on your career from where you'd been at? You said that you weren't feeling 100% comfortable in settling into a future there, and then coming back and getting into property.
Firstly, I think like a lot of Scandinavian countries, just going back to the first point, a lot of Scandinavian countries don't go straight into university. In terms of travel, they'll have a year off where they can go and explore and learn about themselves as much as possible. And that's generally at that vital stage of 18, 19, when most New Zealanders go straight into commerce or law or marketing. And so I think it is really important. They probably have time to be able to reflect. And the time that I had to be able to reflect from the 6 months or so that I was traveling is unlike any other reflection that I think I've had since. You have the time to be able to think when you're traveling, and you don't have the pressures of a 9 to 5 always tapping away at you, where you feel like you need to be conforming to some sort of societal norm. But when you're traveling, or when you have time off, and when you have this productive boredom that you can really engage in, you do have these reflections. And I think it was massive for me in just realizing that the reason that I studied property and the reason that I worked there during university is because I really love property. And I think I loved it a lot more than just chasing money for probably the wrong reasons. And so during those 6 months, I sort of formulated a plan as to how I was going to get back into it and what my career was going to look like. But I don't think if I didn't have that 6 months off, I wouldn't have been able to gain a clear picture and direction about where I wanted to go.
Yeah, I feel like you're quite advanced and ahead of where a lot of other people get to. They stay in these roles like you had at Shout, which was obviously an amazing opportunity, but not quite the right one for you. They can stay there for 10 years, 15 years, and the longer you stay, the more you can start to feel stuck, although I do believe it is a limiting belief that you're stuck at all. But what made you realise only like 1 year to 18 months in that wasn't the right thing for you? Because it's so easy, and I think I had the same thing in my job. You can I rolled through 3 years, and it wasn't until another opportunity popped up that I realised, okay, on reflection, this wasn't really where I wanted to be going, and it was great that I had an opportunity to pop out of that at that time. But for people who are sort of stuck on that wheel, things are going pretty well, but they haven't really stopped and taken the time to reflect. Mm-hmm. How did you get there?
I mean, I was young, and so I think the longer that you stick in a role, in some senses, the more probably attached you feel to it. But I didn't have anything that I had to stay for, so I was probably in quite a unique position. But when you're in a business when you don't really care about your work too much, I was more focusing on the weekends versus the work,
yeah.
And that was pretty apparent over the course of the 18 months working at Shout. I didn't love media. I was struggling to fall in love with advertising and that general industry, really. The people weren't necessarily the same as what I'd been used to working during university at property. The product which you're selling is so much different. Like I was selling a lot of street posters and other forms of media which I just didn't feel very attached to. And so I think I just came to the realization that I didn't want to be doing that. What exactly was going through my head to be able to reach that conclusion, I don't know, but I think I just knew that I didn't want to be doing that for a long, long time. And I think for anyone in that similar position, just having the ability to be able to think and just having time to be able to reflect is so much more important than just going around in the Ferris wheel. Yeah.
And you're not the first person to have said that I've chatted to, so it's definitely a common theme that's coming through, taking that space and time to allow yourself a bit of reflection.
I think talking to people as well. Mm-hmm. Like this, people always internalize it much more than they need to, but so many people, everyone a lot older than you has been through the same sort of decision-making process. So I think just talking to your parents, talking to people that have done travel before, people that have been in a similar space is always a really, really good opponent to actually triggering good decision-making for yourself.
And that's actually something that I wanted to dig into with you a little bit more. You're a great people person and you're a sponge for knowledge. How has learning from and connecting with others allowed you to move through these shifts and start up these new pursuits like No Cigar and things?
I can't even value people enough. I'm just intrinsically very, very interested by people. So I could ask like someone a million questions before they even ask me a question.
Maybe you should be doing the podcast interview.
Maybe. I'm inspired by the surrounding. It's epic. So who knows? But I think learning and asking and just being a really attentive listener is such a valuable skill, and I think that shapes the way that I've been able to direct myself in many forms, whether that be music or property or just learning in general. Because if you ask really good open-ended questions, and I've learned a lot of this through property as well, you learn so much from people, and people are more than willing to share their own advice, of which a lot can be helpful if you really digest it properly. So I'm such a massive advocate for meeting as many people as you can, asking really good questions, and keep on asking as well. And you'll naturally just learn so much, but you have to have this inquisitiveness, which I don't think you can forget about during your whole life, because that is the essence of life which is variation, and I think you get that through being seriously interested in people and seriously interested in all of your surroundings. But I end up, after 2 minutes or 3 minutes of conversation with people, end up asking them about their parents, and I've only just met them, and then I start talking about their grandparents and their grandparents and how they came to New Zealand. It's like I'm just fascinated by people and their stories and where they've got to, and how they're sitting where they're sitting or standing where they're standing.
And I think that's an amazing lesson that everyone can take away from you. You've absorbed so much, and you've also created such strong friendships through being the type of person that you are. You're definitely that type of person that, everyone wants to have you at the party, but also everyone wants to take you aside and have a deep chat as well. So that really reflects in what you've done in terms of your career as well as your friendships, which is pretty epic to see.
You just have to be careful not to do it with too many people, otherwise you spread yourself a bit thin and you.
Exactly. And that probably comes back to taking advice from the right people as well, not just chatting to every single man and his dog. I mean, maybe that's a great way to start, but if you're feeling a bit stuck and confused already, and then you're getting so many different opinions from people who may not be aligned with where you're needing to go, it can start to get a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I've always had in the back of my mind, it's do listen and do ask questions to everyone, but you have to be careful about who you take advice from. And if you don't necessarily look up to that person, you shouldn't always take advice from them, because it's easy to give advice. It's much harder to actually live the advice that you're providing. So you just have to be careful sometimes about taking advice and think about exactly where that advice is coming from.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm aligned and I'm listening. Okay, so let's chat about making music and your job work, two things full time, because that's a huge undertaking. So let's just start with how you got into music at the beginning. I know that you were in a band back at school. Was it at school or at the early days of uni?
All my schools, primary, intermediate and high school. But it started to get a bit more formal when we formed the Kaleidoscope, so I would have been 14.
Oh, wow, young.
You're pretty young, 13 or 14. We played, the first ever gig that we did was when we were, I think, 13, and we were playing at my primary school's music on the field just up the road here. And we were playing in front of my old teachers, like from 3 or 4 years previous. So that was the first ever proper gig that I did with the Kaleidoscopes, and that lasted for 7 or 8 years. And that was formed just from my best mate, Arthur Gillies. We're best mates throughout that whole stage, primary school, intermediate. His brother, Freddie, and then another local legend, William Madison, that we just decided that we were going to start a band one day, and it was a hell of a few years, and like the best foundation in terms of music that we could have had for teenagers, because by the time that No Cigar came along, when I was 24 or 25, I had this really, really good foundation about how to be able to play music with other people, the empathy required in order to be able to have the patience and let music come out of everyone's inner creativity, how to set up a band, how to set up a gig, how to tune your drums. Some would argue that I still don't know how to do that properly, but if it wasn't for those foundational steps of playing in the primary school band, the intermediate band, and then the Kaleidoscopes, I don't think No Cigar would have ever have happened, or at least been able to accelerate at a reasonable rate that we have. And
can you talk us through that journey, starting out No Cigar, and how it's got to where it is today?
Well, it all happened pretty organically. As you know, we're just a bunch of mates. Like it's Benson, who, the bassist, who I've been at school with since grammar, and Arthur, who, as I mentioned, I've been good mates with since I was 5, and then Willie and Josh, who both went to school together and like all lived within a very small locality. So it was just one day that we were like, "Fuck it, let's start jamming." And Willie is this incredible songwriter, and he hadn't started making music much before No Cigar formed.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
So he'd been on the acoustic guitar, he'd been writing songs. He's got a very, very good mind for songwriting, very good mind generally as well. But he'd had these couple songs, and he was thinking of, and he was actually part of a band previously called Dusky Sounds, which ended up kicking him out. He'll tell you the story. But Matt Ross, my other good mate, whose stag do I've got this wedding, and wedding that I'm emceeing next weekend, kicked him out of the band. It's like, it's an ongoing joke that Willie's first band he got kicked out of, he was looking for another band, and he had these songs up his sleeves. The kaleidoscopes had dissipated. I'd been travelling, and I was still playing the drums every now and again. Benson and him were playing together. Josh came along, and he was the lead guitarist that we needed. And suddenly Benson gave me a call one day and was like, "Let's have a jam." And at that stage, it was like late 2018, early 2019.
So it didn't take you long to release your first single after that?
No, it didn't. It took 12 months, essentially. We played at a couple flat parties. We played at the Benson Road flat party. It was our first ever gig was my sister's wedding, and at the start of 2019, and that went shit hot, mainly due to my old man just cranking in the front row. But
I thought you were about to say it went shit, so I'm happy you added the hot after that.
It was shit hot. It was as far as bands at weddings go, anyway. And then we had the Benson Road flat party. Had a few other gigs, but yeah, we released Tickets to Space and wrote that and recorded that at the Lab studio. And that ended up going really, really well, that song. Like, before we even released the next song, we had quite a good following. And so it gave us a little bit of energy surrounding the band. That was early 2020. So we then went into the studio to record another song, which was Valium. That was like February 2020, March 2020, COVID hits. We hadn't released Valium. All of us were in separate areas. If we had any sense, none of us had partners at the time. We could have locked up and wrote an incredible music for 4 or 6 weeks. But the opposite happened. We were all scattered throughout New Zealand.
Well, it was unprecedented.
It was unprecedented. But we thought it was, we honestly thought No Cigar, there was a moment there where we were all relatively semi-depressive. Music hadn't gone the way that we wanted. But then Valium came out during COVID. And I don't know if you recall the lyrics to Valium, but it's like, I'm hoping I see you again. I'm pretty sure Willie played it at your wedding. But it actually resonated with a lot of the audience then, that song. And we were then able to get a bit more life into the band and to breathe again, knowing that maybe it did have a future. So we navigated the next few months from that, and this is us only being together for a year or so. And only after those initial lockdowns is when Arthur joined the band. And he came on as a rhythm guitarist, and we haven't looked back since he's joined, because he is the essence to a lot of our song making as well. So those initial stages were so organic. We were just enjoying spending time together as mates, and we started, like a lot of bands do, just jamming reggae for ages. And some of the music that we came up with, we actually released a song on YouTube, which a lot of people's was their cult favorite. Removed it. Because it was just so not us. It was pretty good music, I feel like a lot of bands do start at that stage, and no offense to reggae, I love reggae, I listen to a lot of reggae, but it's just an easy groove to get into, and probably quite easy for Willie to scat over. But there was many evenings in 2019 where we'd just park up. We had this desolate, abandoned old building that we'd practice in, on Mountain Road, just down the road from Grammar, the school that a couple of us went to. So we'd just go there, we'd jam, we'd get real creative and make music. And then next thing you know, we recorded a song, started to get a bit of traction, COVID hit, released another song, and then Radical Road started to form, which was what is still some of our most popular music. And that really made us think that there could be something in it, so we started to take it a little bit more seriously.
And so in these formative years, or the very beginning, were you all working full-time jobs? And how did you manage the time that you were spending with the band as well as your property career, which was really just getting started?
It was pretty easy back then because we didn't have to commit a huge amount of time. It wasn't like we were going on big tours.
Mm-hmm.
We would just go and jam 3 or 4 times a week, probably, after work.
For what, a few hours at a time?
At a few hours at a time. And the weekends, it didn't feel like work whatsoever. We'd just hang out. As I said, we didn't have any girlfriends. We'd just go up to Mangawhai to Woolies.
And being a group of friends helps with that.
And just like play frisbee, do a lot of team building, I suppose you could call it. And and then the music would come out. And I think it's just such a good analogy for good songwriting. It's like if everyone gets along and there's really, really good energy, you're going to make good music because everyone can feel each other's presence. And as I said, like empathy being a really, really foundational emotion, I think, for me when I'm making music, knowing exactly where people are going, knowing how to take the drums up a notch or down a notch or cut them out exactly. If you're doing that with people that you really love and people that you're mates with, it just happens so naturally. So it wasn't too much of a chore back then, but we were still able to work, all of us, full-time, absolutely, 40 or 50 hours a week, and just look forward to being able to make music after work. It was at that exciting stage where we didn't have any pressure.
And now, balancing, obviously No Cigar has grown a huge amount and is doing so well. For anyone that has not listened, get on your Spotify and look them up. But how are you managing your job now and having that on the side? I mean, they're sort of probably almost getting quite to be the same level of commitment, are they?
Yeah, it's pretty quickly come to taking up a much bigger portion of time.
And what
now.
sort of amount of time is that per week?
At the moment, we're practicing for a gig, and we are doing every night from 6 until 10. Most nights from 6 until 10. And so we're pretty shattered.
I'm not surprised.
But like, if you're talking about spending a time away, like we're now touring. So we started our first tour 2023, and we're now touring, I suppose, around the world. It's mainly Australia and the UK and a bit of Europe. Hopefully we'll be able to get further across the world, and then in the next few years or so, we'll definitely be able to do it. I'll channel that. But we're away for about 3 months of the year now, and that's like fully out of New Zealand or writing music. And so it becomes really challenging for most of us, for almost all of us, to be able to balance our careers now. And I think to be able to, I run my own business essentially. I work for Colliers, but I'm a contractor, and I have to sell commercial property and build up a brand for myself and keep in touch with people. It starts to get really difficult.
Yeah, you can't just sit behind a computer snoozing away on someone else's watch during the day after band practice at night.
Nah, that sounds good. That sounds pretty good. It's a bit boring,
but not your reality.
No. Josh was running a business as a videographer, and he was a contractor as well, and that was getting pretty challenging, spending time outside. And what you don't want, I think, as a real key element to creativity is a professional life suffocating your creativity as well, which is why we've always made it a point to escape, and which is what our second album was all about. It's like the great escape. We all have this form of escapism, which is music, that we all go out of Auckland, go out of New Zealand for. And once you can detach yourself from that, that's when you'll really start, like we were talking about earlier, taking your time away from an initial job to actually think about what you want. It's the same with creativity. You need to be able to disconnect yourself from your everyday reality in order to be able to think a lot more differently. And that's certainly the case with songmaking, is that you don't want to be working too much. So even if we do have work on, we try not to do any during the songwriting process.
Yeah, because that's something I was actually going to ask you, because creativity requires a lot of time and energy and a bit of space. So getting away, making sure you make time for that and really carving it out. And I think that's the same with any business that someone's trying to start on the side of while they have their other career going is just making sure you're actually carving out the time for it. Because if you didn't commit certain hours to No Cigar and you guys all just thought, we'll just do it when we have time, I'm sure it wouldn't work out for many reasons.
Yeah, no, for sure. It wouldn't. You have to commit a certain amount of time, especially when it starts to get a bit more serious. I mean, organically, you'll be able to feel how much time you need to commit, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you'll feel the energy, whether it be a business, whether it be a band, whether or not you're painting paintings which are selling really well, or you're making short documentaries or movies. If you're committing enough time to it and you're getting the energy back, you'll know when to step it up. And I think that happened a couple of years ago when we started to get really, really good reactions from international audiences, and our music's started to get played all over the world with a really, really good following. It's just knowing when to commit a bit more resource, but I don't think it's necessary to go all in too quickly.
Yeah, that's good advice. That sort of takes me to another question. Is it the plan for you to go full-time into music, or has it always been the intention that you're going to maintain your career in property?
I think it would be silly not to have the pipe dream to go full-time. If we had the
I love that.
If we had the ability to be able to do it, I think we'd do it tomorrow. We can create music like on tap like that, and I think we are limited right now. Benson's in London, and all of us are doing quite a bit of travel, and we've got partners, and Josh is getting married in 3 weeks.
You've come quite a long way.
We've come quite a long way, yeah. We wish that we started the band when we were in our early 20s, and I think maybe if we were 25 now, we probably wouldn't have these things to navigate. But yeah, the future for No Cigar and going full-time, I think, is on the horizon. Who knows? It's hard to make a living full-time. There's 5 of us. If you're a DJ and there's only one of you, or if you're a producer, you're making music, it's much easier to be able to commit and have a sustainable income. But we've got 5 people, and we've got girlfriends who are wanting security, and we want security, and so it becomes a bit challenging. So to be able to go full time right now would mean that we'd have to have a pretty good economical, sustainable way to be able to do that. But I think we all independently enjoy what we do anyway, and I think going full time is something that we might be able to achieve from a time standpoint. But all of us are relatively driven individuals anyway, and we enjoy. I enjoy property. Josh is now working with his wife, working on that business that's growing really rapidly. I know Arthur enjoys doing construction projects after winning the block. Shout out, Arthur.
Impressive.
Yeah, so we all do things independently anyway, and I think it's not something that we'd ever commit our full-time resource to, because we'd always have our side hustles. And
so what sacrifices have you had to make personally and maybe professionally, having these two things going at the same time? It sounds like you're doing pretty well. You've got a girlfriend, you managed to do some good stuff, but after work, obviously, you're spending a lot of hours with the band, weekends away, so I'm sure you've had to make some social sacrifices, maybe sacrifices with family and friends. Can you talk us through a little bit about that and how you rationalise that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult for our partners, I think, predominantly, is the main thing. We're away, as I said, for quite a few months of the year, and they're generally, sometimes they're with us, but most of the time they're not, and I think that becomes relatively difficult. And so we just have to learn how to manage that. If we do end up going on a upwards trajectory, I think it will become easier. They might be able to join, and we might be able to
Chicks on tour.
Yeah. But we've missed, all of us have missed weddings, and all of us have missed social events and family events, and it's difficult, but I think we all know that this is probably the most important thing that we're working on creatively, and that we're not going to have the chance to do it for very long, or at least to put this much energy on at this point in our lives. So all the sacrifice comes, I think, at a really good cause. And it's all worth it when you can get the responses from people after gigs telling them that their music has changed their lives, which people have literally come up and said to us. So I think it's all worth it. But yeah, it's certainly something that you need to navigate, and any business owner that's putting in 80 hours a week is going to need to navigate as well, just like any commitment, really.
Yeah, and it's all about the way that you frame it in your mind, right? Rather than missing out on everything that you do have to sacrifice. It's about what you're gaining from doing the things that you're able to do. Exactly like you said, those people coming up to you and telling you how your music has changed their lives, which is pretty epic.
That's right. It's a stage in our lives, I think, that we will go through right now, and having to commit all of this time. I don't think we'll be doing it as intensely for all of our lives. So it's just a mutual understanding that we have to get with all of our nearest and dearest, that we have to go away, and we have to do this, and we want to do it, and people really want us to go and play in their hometowns, and people want us to go and people want to hear our music. So I think to have an opportunity like this, where it's going to influence as many people, when we've got millions of people listening to our music every month, I think you won't get another chance in your life to be able to influence as many people, really.
No, it's nothing short of incredible. So how has your definition of success and fulfillment changed over time? When you started out, you obviously took that lucrative role in media sales, and I think for you at the time that was looking like the golden egg, and you very quickly found out that that probably wasn't exactly it for you, but you're still doing really well in both of your pursuits. What would you say now really motivates you? There's obviously different things. There might be money, success, family time, whatever it is. What is that for you, and how has that changed?
I think a big one for me now is just simplification, and just trying to focus on less things, and not trying to be a hero in all facets of life. It's trying to balance two careers at one time is difficult enough. Trying to also get involved in other business pursuits or commit to too much means that you have to provide a lot less energy to the core things that you should be focusing on, which is, for me, is property, band, and relationships with my girlfriend, and with family, and with friends. So I think the success for me has changed in knowing that I'm going to be happier if I'm achieving more with doing less.
Epic. Marie Kondoing your life.
Yeah. Try, at least.
I still feel like you do everything to a really high degree. You put a lot of passion into everything you do, but as you say, it's probably because you're really focusing on what you're doing, so you can put more energy and passion into those things. Although I do feel like a lot of people looking at you would think that you're able to do everything. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it's easy to perceive something from the outside. To actually understand something intrinsically is really difficult. But you do your best. And I think when we talk about fulfillment, the number one thing that I've focused on this year, and it's only been 7 weeks or whatnot, is health. Because if you have quite a lot going on in your life and you don't have that foundational table to be able to put things on, you don't have anything. If you don't have your health, you can't have any energy to be able to attack all the things that you want to. So I think fulfillment for me, now that I'm 30, Freya,
Aging quickly.
I'm hoping to do what the guy from the US is doing, just reverse my physiology age.
Just another thing to add to your list of things to do.
It probably doesn't help with like 2 stag do's and 3 weddings coming up, But health should be the central pillar for anyone anyway. I mean, without your health, you've got nothing. So I think in order to be able to focus and to think and do all the things that we've talked about, if you don't have a really good base level of health to work off, then you're not going to be able to achieve anything near where you want to.
That's such valuable advice, and something I think people can overlook when they're getting really busy, especially doing what you're doing, balancing two really full-time things. And you can get caught up in rushing and not spending time to prepare the right food or take exercise or take time for mindfulness. So I know that's something that you have always been pretty good at, and it's obviously something you're focused on now. And that is how we get the energy to do all these things. So I completely resonate with that. Totally.
Endless energy, I reckon. You can have endless energy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're definitely an example of that. Our whole friend group looks up to you as having endless energy. So I'm getting you to spill all your secrets to all the listeners.
I don't know about that. You just have good friends, really, and they give you the energy, you know?
Well, there you go. There's some more valuable advice. Okay, so something I really admire about you is your passion for whatever you take on. For someone that is in a job and they're feeling a bit stuck, they're not loving what they do, potentially how you were feeling when you were at Shout, but they don't know what their passion is, so they don't know what to move to. What's some advice you would give them for start digging into what that might be for them?
If you're having these thoughts and if you're in a job and you're not enjoying it that much and you've got something that you love to do on the side, you should start writing down all of your thoughts. And if you write down all your thoughts for a week, then you can reflect back on them. If you write down all of your thoughts for a month, you might find there's some consistency there. And I think that will shape where you need to be able to take your future. If you're emotionally drained after finishing your corporate job and you're sick of wearing a suit and tie, or your boss is reaming you with too much work and is too demanding, I think it's pretty easy to forget about that when there is some good, but in order to be able to direct yourself, you should write down all the thoughts that you have. And I think that will be able to guide you to where you should be spending energy. I think one thing that I got lucky with No Cigar is the other people involved. So I'd say if you do have a passion, it's always better to share it with people and to share where you want to go, whether that be something creative or whether that be a business. I think the way to be able to get practical steps into actually turning it into something tangible is talking to all of the right people about it. If you're getting really good advice and you're stuck, that advice should be able to grease the wheels for the engine that you should really be operating. And I think everyone, there's always someone that's been in a position that you've been in. So if you've got a passion for something, go and talk to someone that's already gone and done what you've done. Go and talk to someone that's actually got a career in the side hustle that you want to pursue. Gain as much knowledge and reflect as much as possible, and you should be able to have a much clearer guiding star towards where you want to go.
I think that's awesome. And this is a rewind moment for people. Rewind and write down those pieces of advice that you just gave them. They are such a good way to start finding out what's going on in your head and really starting to pursue what your purpose is. So I love that. Thank you, Ned. The next thing I think that can get people a bit stuck, they get all this great advice. Listening to this podcast, they might take some great advice, chatting to some epic people, as we've talked about, and then they realise that to put all these building blocks in place, it's actually a lot of hard work. You've already got your full-time job. You sort of just want to go home and relax. It can be a bit daunting to start up this project of finding your purpose. What advice would you give to someone who is feeling a bit stuck about just getting started on the process and the hard work really that it takes to get to find your purpose?
It's all small steps. Like, it's so easy to see the top of the mountain and be like, shit, that's a long way. But if you're just taking really small steps at a time and you're getting really good guidance, there's so much satisfaction by just crossing things off a list that you're achieving on a daily basis. Like, it's so easy to have that massive discrepancy in a vision where you want to go and where you are right now, and it's so easy to be inactive and have anxiousness during that period. But I think just really like noting down small steps that are going to be able to get you there on a daily basis, and starting small would be a really good piece of advice for people just to actually start doing it, because it's the start that matters. Once you start doing it, you'll be fine, and you'll know where you want to go. But just find a way that's manageable for yourself, and do it in small steps first.
That was comforting. Thank you, Ned. And I definitely like the idea of starting with small steps. It's always starting things that's the hardest. Even if it's just something at your job and you know it's a task that you don't really want to do that needs to be done. Once you've started, you always think, I could have done this earlier.
Yeah, procrastination is the devil, for sure. But it's self-fulfilling in the sense that once you start, it's like forming a habit. Once you start a habit, you should be able to get into a good enough rhythm after so many days, after 30 or 60 or 90 days, that it's just as hard to stop. If you're promising yourself that you're going to exercise every day rather than exercising every week, it's actually rather than exercising 3 times a week, promise yourself to exercise every day. It's easier. It's easier to do something every day rather than just selecting. So I think that's the same principle with anything really. That momentum will start generating automatically once you start, and all of the bad habits that you had, or all of the anxiety that you had about starting will wash away pretty quickly once there's momentum.
Have you read the book Atomic Habits?
I've read parts of that book. Yeah, is it James Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, some habit stacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one for anyone struggling with habits and getting things in progress.
For sure. With health being the foundation, if you're used to sleeping in, a good hack that Mark Sinnott, the chairman of Colliers, told me, put your cell phone on the other side of the bedroom. Because everyone's got the tendency to snooze. Everyone has a tendency to lie in bed for too long and they overthink things, and then they end up sleeping in for another half an hour, whatnot. Put your phone on the other side of the bedroom. Put your running gear just next to it as well, or your exercise gear, and go and smash out a workout. It's pretty hard to have a bad day after you smash out a workout in the morning.
Totally agree with that. Thanks, Ned. Okay, we've talked a lot about what to do. Is there anything you'd advise against when making a career shift or starting up something on the side?
Anything that I wouldn't do?
Maybe anything.
Getting in with the wrong people is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You
had that experience travelling.
Yeah. Getting in with the wrong people and just spending too much time with the wrong people, it would be not a great thing. Like if you're thinking about a business and you want some support and you've got a partner that is keen to do some business with you, I think it's hard to reverse those decisions once you start. So just really putting in the groundwork to be able to select the right person that you're going to be going into business with, or making music with, or doing any forms of art with. Really, you have to have really good people around you. So don't go into things with the wrong people.
We've all heard the horror stories of business partner breakups, band breakups.
Yeah, for sure. So
that's solid advice.
Yeah.
You've built a seriously successful career at Colliers. For anyone that is potentially interested in a path like you have at Colliers in property, or something similar in the sales realm, real estate, or another competitive industry, what is some advice you would give to someone who wants to build a high-level career in one of those spaces?
Work for the right person.
It's all coming back to the people. I like this. It's a nice theme.
It's the people for sure. I don't think selecting a company is a good idea. I think selecting a boss is a really good idea. I've been so lucky with Shout and with Colliers, and through work all throughout high school, just working for really good people. And if you work for really good people, they'll teach you. They'll teach you all about the industry. They'll teach you all about who to deal with, and in order to be able to start a good career in property or in sales or anything like that, just get a really, really good manager. And that manager will generally select really, really good team members to be able to work with. Most of the team that I work with now has still been there for as long as I've worked there. Some of them have been there for 20 plus years.
That's a real testament to your boss and the team.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's all about selecting the right person that you want to work for. And then if people want to get into property or sales, it's all pretty fast paced. So I'd say have really good health, read a lot, and just try to surround yourself with good people the whole time. Yeah.
And when you're saying read a lot, do you mean read a lot in general and just expand the mind, or particularly in the field that you're trying to get into?
You could be a salesperson for 5 years and still not know how to sell very well, but by reading a good book, by reading how to deal with people, how to ask the right questions. Like someone was telling me the other day about a book which I read a few years ago, and it's I think his name's Jonathan Voss. It's Never Split the Difference. It's about
read that one.
It's about negotiating, but it's more than just negotiating. It's actually like listening and hearing what people's needs are, and just really having a good level of empathy as well. Like if I didn't read that, I probably wouldn't have the patience that I would when I'm dealing with people and just really hearing their concerns. Reading books like David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me during COVID was really pivotal for me in terms of getting my health together, especially when most of the world were getting sick and there was a huge anxiety about having COVID. Actually being able to build calluses, as he calls it, on your mind and transferring those calluses from physical activity into your mental models, I think is really, really important as well. If you're reading books like those and you're in fast-paced environments like property or sales, it's going to be very, very advantageous for yourself to actually put energy into yourself, then you can put that energy into other people.
And I was going to ask you about any book or podcast recommendations. Are those your recommendations, or is there anything else that you want to drop in?
I love reading a bit of philosophy. And this one book that I purchased from this basement bookshop in New York when I was traveling in 2017, which I've had with me on most of my travels ever since, and I just flick through it every now and again, is by a Stoic philosopher called Epictetus, and it's called The Art of Living. And I think that's what transformed a lot of my thoughts during that travel as well. Like he has this one section about not conforming to modern entertainment. And I'd noticed that during my travels, I still had Instagram at that point, and I was always thinking about where to take the next picture and where to post it, and thinking way too much about what other people were going to think about a photo on the internet. And I wasn't really living in the present. And I read this one passage from him, and it's like, you shouldn't conform to modern forms of entertainment. It's people really just trying to get your attention and steal your attention. I read that. I'm like, straight away deleted Instagram, and I haven't had it since. And there's so many good lessons from that. The Stoicism philosophy is really practical, and it's not all fluffy like a lot of the philosophers that you read. And it's all about what you can control and not worrying about what you can't control, and like really good wisdom in that. I think that's probably the book that has shaped my thinking the most, and probably led to a lot of the decisions which I made.
And for anyone thinking about deleting Instagram but feeling that they're going to be disconnected, Ned is one of the most connected people I know, and he has not suffered in his relationships from deleting Instagram. So there's a little bit of inspiration for you.
Amen.
Okay, another few quickfire questions for you, Ned. What is a belief that you used to have and you've now completely changed your mind about?
Just recently, the belief that I've changed is working really hard instead of working smart. So that's swapped. For so long, it was just working hard and putting in all the energy that you can with Colliers and going and to band for hours and hours afterwards and putting so much energy into that. I think just since I've matured a little bit over the last couple of years and 30 has now come upon me, I'm thinking a bit more profound and philosophically about things, where to spend a bit more energy, and it's actually spending energy in the right places instead of all the places. So I think working smart and actually thinking about where you want to allocate your energy is so much more valuable than just working hard pointlessly. You still have to work hard. Everyone has to work hard. But I think it's just allocating your time to the things that actually matter, rather than just working hard and putting your head down for no really good reason.
Yeah. That's something I learnt through my post-concussion syndrome chronic fatigue as well. I had really limited time in the day to give to the things that mattered. And so you learn how to really prioritise and work a lot smarter. And there's some great books out there on productivity for anyone that needs help in that space as well, how to work smarter, not harder. So I think that's a super actionable takeaway for people. All these lessons that you're learning at 30, Ned, anyone who's younger in their 20s hasn't yet come upon these realizations, here's your quick hit to 30.
Yeah. Well, it's learning to say no as well. It's hard to say no to a lot of people.
For sure.
I want to come and do this. Do you want to join this club? Do you want to join the sports team? Yeah, I could. The old me probably would have said yes, but then you end up disappointing people half the time and not being able to show up because you've got too much on your plate, and that stresses you out.
What's a good way to say no? A lot of people struggle with saying no. How do you do it?
Honestly. You have to say it honestly, eh? Otherwise people just end up fluffing about and asking you even more. Just say no, I can't. But you have to give a reason, and you will have a legitimate reason. Don't just say no and then bugger off and you offend them. But you just have to say, I've got so many things on my plate. I told someone the other day, I'm just trying to simplify my life, so I have to say no. Sorry.
Can't argue with that.
No.
Everyone else is probably just jealous that you're doing that and they're not.
Exactly. And yeah, that shut them up.
Okay. Well, I think we have so many valuable takeaways from this. I don't need to ask you any more questions. You've given me and the listeners a huge amount. I actually think you could be an inspirational speaker, Ned.
Oh, thank you.
You speak so well and you have so many good points to convey to people. Where can people find you personally if they want to connect with you, and where can people find No Cigar?
No Cigar is pretty easy. It's across every channel that you can think of.
Start typing in no into Google and it will just come up right away.
Exactly. No Cigar will just automatically pop up. Most viewed. If you want to find me personally, you can just WhatsApp me. It's the best way. Call me, WhatsApp me, email me. But you won't find me on much social media.
Nice.
I think I have Facebook, but I don't use it. I just use it for Messenger. Otherwise, I can't keep in touch with the boys from No Cigar. So, yeah, meet me face to face. That's probably the best way.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear. That's what we're doing now. We're here face to face, which is epic. Okay, Ned, this has been such an epic chat. I'm so grateful for you coming, spending the time with me and the listeners to impart all of this valuable wisdom, that especially all the things that you've learnt since you hit 30. So we'll wrap that up later into a few actionable takeaways out of all of this, but thanks for being here. That was epic.
Thank you. The good shift.
The good
Going
shift.
off.